Unbelievable truth, waking up as a blacksmith in 800 AD changes everything. Forever. In the damp chill of a dark morning, ancient fire crackled ominously, casting strange shadows on the stone walls. The air buzzed, thick with secrets, as if the very ground whispered tales of forgotten heroes. It was a place where time blurred, where history held its breath. There, surrounded by tools that seemed almost sentient, Thomas woke up. His heart raced. Was he really in the year 800 AD? The weight of an anvil loomed over him like a silent guardian of mysteries yet to unfold. The blacksmith's forge was alive with wonder. The smell of smoldering coal mixed with the sweet scent of iron. But there was something about the rusted tools that seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Each stroke of the hammer echoed, not just through the walls, but into Thomas's very bones. The faint glow of hot metal illuminated ghostly hands forging destiny, hands that weren't his own. What was going on? Then, as he pieced together the fragments of his situation, a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. Someone or something watched from the corner of the room. The clanging of metal drowned out an uneasy whisper in the air, sending chills down his spine. Was it just his imagination, or could he really feel the heavy gaze of a long-dead master smith looming over him, urging him to create? His breath hitched. The sensation was electric, unfurling a tight knot in his chest, yet thrilling him at the same time. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His senses sharpened as he grasped a hammer, its cool handle fitting perfectly in his palm. Suddenly, the reality of his predicament crashed down like a thunderous storm. The air electrified with urgency, the forge became an uncharted world. Every clang of metal not only forged weapons but carved paths through time. Could he bend history to his will? Or would destiny assert its dominance over him? Mystery loomed as Thomas looked around, a decision hung over him like a razor's edge. What lay ahead? Would he become the legend or be lost to time forever? With the hammer poised above the anvil, Thomas felt a tremor beneath his feet. He glanced towards the far corner of the forge, where the shadows seemed to pulse like a living thing. The flickering firelight danced across the walls, revealing a tattered tapestry depicting a legendary battle, heroes and monsters frozen in eternal conflict. A chill clawed up his spine. Was he stepping into a story much larger than himself? The forge's heat wrapped around him, but Thomas felt cold sweat bead on his forehead. He swung the hammer down, connecting metal on metal, and the resulting clang seemed to shatter the echoing silence. But this time, it was met with an answered vibration, a deep, resonant sound that traveled through the ground, reverberating in his bones. It was like the forge was alive, responding, reacting, breathing. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice lost in the chaos of clanging metal, but the shadows remained stubbornly quiet. The tool's eerie hum grew louder, drowning his thoughts. Gripping the hammer tighter, he felt its warmth seep into his skin. It was familiar, almost intimate. Could he truly master this forge? Or was it merely playing with him? Images of the life he once knew flicked through his mind, the humdrum of his average job, responsibilities that weighed heavily. A life without purpose. But here, within these stone walls, every spark held a promise. He could reshape himself, mold his destiny with every strike. But what would that mean? How much of himself would he have to forfeit to become a master smith? Suddenly, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. Thomas jumped, heart racing wildly. The apparition was tall, cloaked in a garment of worn leather and steel, a distant echo of a bygone era. The face was spectral, yet intense. The eyes burned with a fire that pierced through the years. It pointed silently at the anvil, urging him to continue his work. Create the apparition seemed to command without words. But the silent pressure overwhelmed Thomas. He felt an undeniable compulsion to forge something magnificent, something that would utter his existence across time. As he worked, breath coming in quick gasps, visions swirled around him. Shapes of weapons that had changed the tides of battles beckoned at the forefront of his mind. Swords, shields, each one a flicker of fate, a chance to make history. Would his creation serve others or write his own legend? The forge's warmth shifted, replaced by an icy draft that sent a shiver through the room. A low growl emanated from the walls, reverberating into his bones. The atmosphere thickened, tension boiling just beneath the surface. What had he awakened? Could the spirits intertwined with this place be friends or foes? He caught a glimpse of armor shimmering in the corner. Was it meant for him to wear, or a stark reminder that wielders of great power often met dark outcomes? He felt a lump form in his throat. Fear gripped him, but determination ignited a spark within. He was not ready to cower in fear. "Show me," he called out to the shadowy figure, a challenge igniting in his voice. "If I am to become a master smith, I need to know what lies ahead." The shadow flickered ominously, as the forge erupted in a cacophony of sound, metal rattling, flames roaring. Then, in an instant, it fell silent. Thomas's heart raced. A choice lay before him: follow the path of history, or forge a new one, possibly at the cost of everything he held dear. And then, a figure darted outside, silhouetted against the heavy clouds gathering on the horizon. Was it friend or foe? As Thomas's breath quickened, the ancient forge waited, like a restless spirit ready to unleash the secrets of the past. What awaited him in the shadows? And would he be brave enough to step into the unknown? A sudden rush of wind blew through the forge, extinguishing a few flames and sending a chill spiraling around Thomas. The shadows flickered violently, as if trying to maintain their own form, and he could almost hear them whispering secrets he was not yet meant to grasp. The figure outside was still poised at the edge of the forge's view, waiting. Was this the embodiment of the choice ahead? His heart thudded painfully in his chest, a beat echoed by the lonely clang of his hammer against the anvil. Together, they were creating a rhythm of uncertainty, a melody steeped in tension. "Show yourself!" Thomas shouted into the growing darkness. Without warning, the figure stepped forward. The clouds parted just enough for a beam of moonlight to wash over the figure. It was a woman, her face framed in wild hair, wild and fierce. "Did you call for me?" she asked, her voice dripping with an edge of challenge. It was a voice that set his teeth on edge but held a captivating allure. "What are you doing here?" Thomas asked, struggling to maintain his composure. The intensity in her gaze held a wisdom that was both unnerving and comforting. It felt as if she could see right through him, straight into the chaos of choices he faced. "I came to find you," she replied, glancing at the terrifying shadows that danced around them. "The forge chooses its smith, and I need your help." Her urgency pierced through the veil of doubt that threatened to engulf him. "Help with what?" he asked, the weight of uncertainty resting heavy on his shoulders. "The shadows are restless. They whisper tales of old, and you hold the key to their release." She took a step closer, the moonlight casting an ethereal glow on her features. "You must confront what lies hidden within this forge before it consumes you." Something in her words flickered in Thomas' mind, igniting a flame of realization. The shadows, they were not merely a ghostly trick of the light. They were alive, full of stories and rage, and perhaps darkness that had long been buried. "But why me?" he managed to stutter, still wrestling with disbelief tangled in determination. "What can I possibly do?" "Everything." Her intensity soared, echoing against the silence of his 4D world. "You have the power to create. To forge not just metal, but history itself." Thomas felt a sudden flood of hope, dripping through the cracks of fear. Could his hands truly wield such power? Before he could respond, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows drew closer, darker and more menacing. A rumble, foreboding and low, danced through the stones beneath their feet. Thomas' stomach dropped. He had stepped into a game played by entities more powerful than he understood. "Wait!" he shouted, taking a half-step back. "No!" the woman fired back. "There's no time to hesitate." With no time left to weigh his options, he lunged forward, the hammer clutched tightly in his fist. "Together?" he questioned. "Yes," she said, her eyes flashing with resolve. As they stood side by side, the forge erupted again, igniting with a fiery brilliance that illuminated the darkness. Shadows twisted and howled. What had he unleashed? Thomas felt the forge surge beneath him, an almost sentient force demanding his obedience. Would he surrender his future to the shadows, or would he carve his own path forward? The forge was hungry for creation, but history whispered for destruction. And within that chaos, at the helm of fate and uncertainty, Thomas realized it was a game he could not simply walk away from. They were on the precipice of something much larger. But what truly lay ahead? And would they both return to face whatever was coming for them? The air crackled with tension as the shadows converged around them, swirling like a living entity driven by rage and ancient whispers. Thomas felt his heart race. The forge beneath him rumbled, as if the very ground realized the chaos unfolding. He exchanged a terrified glance with the woman. Was she truly ready for what was about to happen? A flicker of doubt crossed his mind as he gripped his hammer. He was just a blacksmith. Each strike of the iron, each thump of the hammer, felt like a familiar rhythm. But now? Now, it was a harmonious echo of dread. The shadows clawed at the edges of his consciousness, pulling him into their enigmatic realm. "What do I do?" he breathed, the words barely escaping his lips. "Forge your will," she commanded, her voice unwavering. "Channel the power of the forge. We are not here to fight, merely to awaken." Awaken what? He thought, panic merging with resolve. He could almost feel the shadows pulsating, a heartbeat in the darkness urging him to make a choice. He steadied himself and took a deep breath. With a mighty swing of the hammer, he struck the anvil. The sound boomed, shattering the thick air, and for a moment, the shadows recoiled as if struck. Their whispers faltered, replaced by a hollow silence. But instead of retreating, they surged forward with renewed fury. Thomas's skin prickled as the weight of their essence washed over him, a rush of despair, yearning, and rage like a torrent fighting to break free. "Keep forging," the woman yelled, urgency piercing the moment that he struck again, with all his might. Sparks flew, illuminating fragments of the shadows' faces twisted in agony, memories bound in grief. Thomas felt their stories flood his mind: betrayal, love lost, dreams shattered. Each clang of the hammer sent ripples through the darkness, and he could feel the energy drawing on something deep within him. A power he never knew he possessed. His chest tightened with the weight of the pain surrounding him. Were these shadows the souls of those who had suffered, waiting to be set free? "Can we save them?" he shouted, as the shadows seemed to howl in response. "Not save them all," she replied, determination blazing in her eyes. "But we can give them a voice. Let them tell their story." Thomas gritted his teeth and swung harder, pouring everything he had, the fear, the hope, into every strike. The forge roared with life, flames licking hungrily at the shadows. In that moment, he understood that he wasn't just a smith, he was the bridge between worlds, a harbinger of change. Driven by a new sense of purpose, he found rhythm in the chaos. The shadows began to writhe, twisting between anguish and something resembling liberation. As their forms pulsed in the light, whispers turned into words, a cacophony of voices crashing around them. "Free us, remember us," they pleaded, each echo pulling at Thomas's heart. "No. You have the strength to stop this. Don't let them drown you," the woman shouted, rallying against the wave of darkness. But as the shadows darkened and thickened, something deep within Thomas flared. The resolve in his heart hardened with every beat, and suddenly light erupted from the forge. It washed over both of them, illuminating the forge in an otherworldly blaze. Something was changing. The power had shifted, and both the shadows and the woman lurched forward under its influence. "Stand firm!" he shouted, wielding the hammer like a beacon of defiance against the gathering storm. The intensity swelled, and with a final strike, the hammer connected with the anvil, releasing a shattering wave of light that radiated through the forge. But just as he felt he might free the trapped souls, darkness surged back, more torrential, more menacing than before. What lurked behind that wave, threatening to envelop them? Would they be consumed by the shadows they sought to save, or had they awakened something far worse in the process? The choice loomed closer than ever, and the next strike could be their last. The ground trembled violently, a warning that sent shockwaves through Thomas's body. It felt as if the forge itself had awakened, stoking the flames of an ancient fury that had lain dormant for centuries. With each pulse of the shadows, he sensed the very fabric of reality teetering on a precipice. "Hold on." The woman's voice cut through the whirlwind of chaos, fierce yet tempered with urgency. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "This is our moment, Thomas. We can't falter now." Thomas felt the hammer grow heavy in his hand, its weight changing from mere metal to a conduit of raw power. Memories of the whispers surged within him, wrapping around his spine like a serpent, begging for release. He could feel their sorrow, their anger. They were prisoners in this realm, pulled between the worlds, longing for remembrance yet shackled by their suffering. "Who are you?" he shouted into the thick air, his voice rising above the cacophony. "What do you want from us?" "Your strength." They wailed back, a cacophony of voices trembling in the shadows, merging into an overwhelming chorus. "Your strength is our only hope." Taking a deep breath, he lifted the hammer high, the light from the forge illuminating the darkened corners around them. The energy crackling in the air around him pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with every strike of his hammer. He swung down again, the sound ricocheting through the forge like thunder. The shadows recoiled, twisting and morphing, revealing glimpses of their tormented faces. A man with hollow eyes, a woman clutching a child, lost souls caught in the web of time. Each face tugged at the edges of Thomas's heart. They wanted to be remembered. They wanted to belong. "Listen. I need you to focus," he yelled, pushing against the overwhelming tide of despair. With every hit, he felt sweat drip down his brow, his heart pounding in a relentless rhythm that mirrored the hammer's strikes. "Tell me your story. Let the world know who you are." As he forged, the shadows became brighter, their forms less defined but filled with emotion. Voices echoed clearer now, each one fighting for attention, layering over each other, creating a devastating song of loss and betrayal. "Betrayed by our kin. Forgotten in the dark. Forgive us." But even amidst the rising tide of voices, a sinister undertone seeped in, an awareness that not all shadows sought liberation. A darkness lurked deeper within, a force that thrived on their agony. Thomas's breath quickened, his body aching. "I can't, there's too many. We won't be able to save them all." A harsh laugh cut through the cries of the shadows. It reverberated with malice, growing louder with each hammer strike. "They seek release, but for every soul awakened, one must be claimed in return. Your light will be their darkness." "No!" he roared, fueling the hammer with the full force of his despair and determination. The forge blazed brighter, illuminating the forge's stone walls, casting giant shadows that danced wildly around him as if mocking his struggle. "But I won't be their sacrifice," he shouted into the abyss, swinging the hammer again as reality buckled around him. The shadows howled, a mix of agony and fury. They surged towards him, desperate to be freed, but also desperate to drag him with them into the unseen depths. Every pulse bore the weight of a decision, a choice that would define him and countless others. The heart of the forge surged back, waiting for his command. As the air thickened, the reality of what he faced crystallized. Was it too late to turn back? With one final strike, could he unravel the chaos, or undo the tether binding him to their plight forever? In that crucial moment, as the darkness pressed closer, Thomas felt the shadows straining against him. He would either reshape his fate or surrender to the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. The time had come to make a choice, and the churning void waited hungrily for the price of his resolve. The hammer met the anvil with a deafening clang, a sound that filled Thomas with a mix of terror and resolve. As the vibrations rippled through the forge, he felt a surge of chaotic energy. The weight of the past and the crushing presence of the shadows pressed against him. "Focus, Thomas!" the woman shouted, her voice breaking through the storm. "You have to channel it. We need a bridge between worlds." He took a step back, sweat glistening on his brow, his body trembling. The shadows writhed around him, their whispers rising to fever pitch. The echo of their torment clawed at him, pulling at threads of empathy he didn't know still existed. Each voice was a dagger, each story a bleeding wound. "Can we even save them?" he thought, doubt creeping into his mind. He couldn't shake the laughter that consumed him, the sinister promise of sacrifice. "Your doubts are poison," one of the shadows hissed, a voice more resonant than the others. "We won't be the only ones to suffer. What of you? What will you become in the end?" The darkness in him stirred, emboldened by the chaos. "What will you choose?" it taunted, wrapping tendrils of fear around his heart. As he prepared to strike again, he hesitated. "If I let them out, what if I am the one who is lost?" The thought shook him to his core. Yet, the faces of the lost souls haunted him, each a reminder of what was at stake. "I will not be your puppet," he shouted defiantly, swinging the hammer once more. The forge erupted. Flames licked higher, engulfing the shadows that dared to approach him. They screamed and recoiled, their cries twisting into a symphony and rising higher. Through the crackling fire, he saw fragments of their truths, betrayals, broken promises, lost moments. "Tell me your name," he bellowed, striking again, each hit igniting the fury within him. "Tell me your story." "Anna," one voice cried, a ripple of warmth slicing through the cold despair. "Jacob," another followed, filled with grief and longing. A flood of names and memories poured forth, cascading into the forge, dripping like molten metal. The shadows, once ominous, began to shift and form, less like a menacing fog and more like broken souls yearning for freedom. "See?" the woman said, her voice breaking into the cacophony of cries. "You are our salvation. Let the forge purify their spirits, but be wary, the darkness will fight back harder now." He could feel the intensity growing. The air was thick with tension and purpose. Each pulse from the shadows beat against his chest like a drum, matching the rhythm of his hammer. Yet, as the energy surged, he felt something deeper clawing at his soul, the price of their release. With every name, every memory emboldened him, yet the laughter echoed louder. Darker shadows slithered into view, flickering at the edges, their intentions clear. They were ravenous, wanting to devour the light that he unleashed. "You think you're their hero?" one hissed, sliding closer, its eyes glinting with malice. "You cannot save them all without losing a part of yourself." "No." He swung the hammer down again, a burst of light erupting from the forge, momentarily blinding even the darkness. The shadow recoiled, but their hordes surged forward, clawing for his mind, entwining their ethereal fingers around his thoughts. "Give in!" they shrieked, a mesmerizing lullaby that tugged at his resolve. "Join us!" his breath hitched. The hammer trembled in his grip, shaking with the weight of his choice. But the harmony in his heart ignited a fire urging him to resist, to break free from their grasp. With one last strike, he would have to decide, would he stand against the darkness, woven deep into the shadows, or risk losing himself forever in the chaos? And then the shadows surged, a tidal wave of despair crashing down upon him. The world around Thomas seemed to distort, as if he were trapped in a whirlpool of despair. Shadows encircled him, their whispers now a cacophony of panic and rage. The very air felt alive with malevolence, and the flames from the forge danced menacingly, casting eerie shapes that snaked and flickered. "Fight!" The woman screamed, urgency flowing like a pulse through their surroundings. Her eyes, wide and desperate, reflected the firelight. "You hold their stories. Channel that power. They are counting on you." But fear gnawed at him, a relentless beast clawing inside his mind. What if he was misjudging the shadows? Was their pain just a reflection of his own failures? Every name screamed into his soul, each memory a shard of glass digging deeper into the fragile heart of his resolve. He had wanted to save them, but what if saving them meant embracing the darkness that threatened to consume him? He swung the hammer, his muscles straining as he aimed for the invisible wall separating the living from the damned. A brilliant light erupted, fracturing the shadows momentarily, but it only fueled their rage. They howled, a chorus of suffering that hit him like a brick wall. For every ounce of light he conjured, darker forms writhed into existence, grotesque faces twisting with malevolence. "Your power is nothing." One of them howled, the ground vibrating beneath Thomas' feet. "You are merely our pawn, swinging a hammer for a fleeting moment of glory." "No!" he roared back, shaking his head as if that could dispel their toxic grip on reality. "I will not be a puppet. I will not succumb to your despair." With a deep breath, he centered himself, recalling the warmth of Anna's voice, the softness of Jacob's memory filling him with a surge of strength. He focused on the forge, feeling the heat radiating, becoming one with it. This wasn't only about him anymore. He remembered what it meant to be human, to have hope against overwhelming odds. As he lifted the hammer again, the shadows drew closer, whispering poison in his ear. "You can save them, but you will bear their scars. Can you carry their pain?" Images flashed before him, moments of joy, laughter, love shattered by loss. Each face burned like a brand against his heart. He felt the weight of it all, a burden he was now willing to shoulder. "If I must carry their pain, I won't carry it alone. I will take their stories and forge them anew." He struck the anvil with every ounce of fury, creating waves of light that surged like a firestorm, stirring the very elements around them. The forge sang, a harmony of anguish and redemption, and for a fleeting moment, the shadows paused, their cries turning from anger to confusion, then chaos erupted. Dark tendrils lashed out, striking at Thomas with desperate ferocity. They plunged into his mind, seeking to unravel the hope he kindled, desperate to tear apart the connection he had forged with the lost souls. With each strike of his hammer, he felt pieces of himself being ripped away, darkness clawing at his spirit, trying to gain the upper hand. The woman shouted again, her voice somehow cutting through the din. "You have the power, Thomas. Don't let them turn you into one of them." He stumbled back, fatigue weighing heavy on his bones. Sweat poured down his face, but his grip on the hammer tightened. It was now or never. This battle was not just for the souls trapped in shadows, but for his very soul and existence. As he raised the hammer one last time, he heard a voice behind him, smooth and slick like oil. "You cannot resist forever, Thomas. Join us, and you will be more powerful than you ever imagined. You will not suffer in vain." With a defiant glare into the swirling void, he felt the weight of his decision hanging in the air, thick like a storm cloud. The choice lay before him, give in, or stand tall against the temptation. And in that moment, clarity struck like lightning. "I choose to fight." The hammer descended, roaring down with blistering intensity. The shadows cried out, their tormented screams echoing in unison, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting to see what would emerge from the chaos of light and shadow. The ground shook as the hammer connected with the anvil, unleashing a wave of searing light that burst forth like a star exploding in the night sky. Thomas felt the warmth wash over him, filling his body with exhilarating strength. For the briefest moment, the shadows recoiled from the light, howling in agony, but the reprieve was short-lived. Their dark forms surged forward again, angry and chaotic. He felt the weight of their pain crashing against him like a rogue wave. "This is futile. one shrieked. You can never extinguish us. Thomas gritted his teeth against their piercing voices. Pain flared in his chest, an unbearable reminder of every failure, every loss that had brought him to this moment. But now, he was not just a man with regrets, he was a beacon of defiance. Clenching his jaw, he took another deep breath. Light. He had to anchor himself in hope. I forge not just for you, but for everyone. He shouted fiercely, and with that declaration, he swung again. The hammer met the anvil with a deafening crash, and light swirled in blinding tendrils, dispersing the shadows for just a heartbeat longer. Around him, the forge roared to life, igniting a fire deep in his core. The flames licked at the edges of the darkness, and it surged with an almost tangible desperation. He could feel their intensity, their rage rising like a tide. But within that chaos, a glimmer of clarity cut through the madness. Remember the stories. Remember their names. The woman urged, her voice piercing through the cacophony. They were people. Real lives. You're not just fighting shadows, you're fighting for their legacies. Images flashed in his mind like lightning strikes, a mother holding her child, friends gathered around a fire, lovers whispering promises under the stars. Each memory pulsed with life, an electric surge flooding his system. Thomas struck the anvil again, and this time, an immense surge of energy erupted. The existing flames became an inferno, illuminating the entire chamber in bright, flickering light. Shadows twisted violently, thrashing outward as if trying to escape the blaze that threatened to engulf them, but with every swing of the hammer, he felt more of himself slip away. The darkness clawed at his mind, shadows flinging their curses with renewed fervor. A guttural roar erupted, amplifying the sound of despair, and he staggered back as pain shot through his temples. They will only suffer if you continue. The voice slithered through, dark and seductive. Embrace your true power. No! He shouted, shaking his head violently. It was a trap, a snare designed to ensnare him in their web of despair. I will not be your vessel. With renewed vigor, he pushed against the pain. He wouldn't yield to this illusion. This was the crossroads of his soul, a battle for his own humanity. Thomas could feel the whispers of the lost souls wrapping around him, suffocating yet familiar, their stories intertwining with his. Please! He cried out, planting a foot firmly on the ground and raising the hammer high once more. I choose to remember. The darkness writhed, and his heart raced as he brought down the hammer with all the force he could muster. The impact resonated through the air like thunder, the forge erupting in a blizzard of shimmering light. But then came a bone-chilling silence. Thomas blinked, realizing that the shadows had paused, hovering like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. What would they do now? Their cries had transformed into low, rumbling growls, fluctuating with tension, and then slowly a shape emerged from the swirling darkness. A figure stepped forward, tall and foreboding, dark eyes piercing through the haze. A face he recognized but hadn't expected to confront. Thomas, the figure said, its voice echoing like a distant storm. You thought you could fight me and win? His heart dropped. The shadows coalesced around the figure, revealing the cruel smile curling on familiar lips. You've always been more than just a man, more than a blacksmith. Are you ready to embrace it? The choice hung in the air, heavier than ever before. Between resisting the darkness or embracing the monstrous power lurking within. Thomas felt the shift, the gravity of the decision pulling at him like a tide. What would this new power uncover? What lay in wait beyond the tantalizing darkness? Thomas stood frozen, the hammer still raised, his heart pounding like a war drum against his ribs. He peered into the depths of the figure's eyes, searching for traces of his former existence. There was familiarity, yes, but it was cloaked in layers of darkness, a chilling reminder of what he might become. Are you ready to embrace it? The figure repeated, its voice wrapping around him like a shroud. All your pain, your bitterness, your anger, it can be yours to command. You have the power to bend the shadows to your will. The temptation hung in the air, whisper-soft yet deafening. His thoughts raced, grappling with the chaos swirling within him. On one hand, he could reclaim everything he had lost, an army of shadows bending to his call. On the other, surrendering to that darkness could mean losing the very essence of who he was. Every cherished memory handed over like a sacrificial offering. "No!" he shouted, each word driven by sheer desperation. "I want to let you take me." The figure stepped closer, an imposing presence against the backdrop of the flickering forge. "Then you doom yourself to remain a mere blacksmith, a simple soul lost in a raging storm. They will never remember your name." But every fiber of his being screamed otherwise. The lives he fought for, families, friends, were worth more than fleeting power. They deserved to shine just like the light he wielded. "I choose them," Thomas roared, slamming the hammer down once more. The anvil vibrated beneath the weight of his resolve, and waves of radiant energy exploded outward, sending shockwaves through the shadows. Yet the darkness didn't crumble, it shifted. The figure laughed, an eerie sound that resonated deep in Thomas's very bones. Where the shadows swirled, they began to form faces twisted, misery-laden, eyes full of torment. "Do you see?" the figure taunted. "This is your legacy. Not glory or righteousness but suffering, forever intertwined with your fate. You must see the truth." Memories vivid, haunting blazed in his mind, bright yet twisted with pain. Each face felt like a dagger, slicing through the armor of determination he was struggling to maintain. "Stop!" he shouted, forcing himself to focus. "I want to let you distort their stories." With every ounce of will, Thomas directed the hammer towards the center of the swarm. There had to be a way to turn this horror into light, to reclaim the power without surrendering his soul. He swung with purpose, and once more, a cascade of radiant energy erupted. The forge flared violently back to life, purging the dark images, but he could still feel their claws gripping him, pulling him back, urging him to falter. The female voice urged again, fierce and unyielding. "You are not alone. You carry their stories. Every choice, every sacrifice, is yours to channel." Thomas felt the weight of it all. The memories, they weren't burdens, they were flames igniting his heart. The fire inside him began to pulse with vigor. If he could remember them as they truly were, lives, loves, dreams, then perhaps he could indeed forge a different path. Gathering all he had, he roared once more, channeling every ounce of light into that one swing. For them. The anvil exploded in a shockwave of white, bright enough to blind the oppressive darkness. For a split second, even the howling shadows seemed to cower. But through that brightness, he caught a glimpse. The figure turned, revealing something he hadn't expected. The shadows began to fracture, and amidst them, William, an old friend lost years ago, emerged, eyes wide with a mixture of anguish and hope. "Help me, Thomas!" William cried, his body caught halfway between light and shadow. A shiver ran through Thomas. How many more souls were trapped in the torment surrounding him? Each face was a reminder of his journey, of the cost of hope. The choice loomed larger, fraught with implications. Saving them could mean succumbing to the darkness he had fought against. "Will you serve the darkness or embrace the light?" The figure's voice thundered, echoing through the forge as shadows lashed out anew, more furious than ever. Heart racing, Thomas stood at the precipice of his greatest choice yet. What would he sacrifice to reclaim those lost? What awaited him and the souls trapped in this dark web? And just like that, he was torn again, caught between the light he wielded and the shadow that beckoned. Would he rise to save them or plunge deeper into despair? The moment held its breath, and so did Thomas. The echoes of pain ricocheted off the walls of the ancient forge, and with every heartbeat, the shadows coiled tighter around him. He could feel them whispering to him, begging him to yield, to join their ranks of despair. But through that tempest of darkness, a flicker of hope ignited within him, fueled by his memories of every precious face, the loved ones he had lost, the life he had once led. Enough, he shouted, voice raw with emotion. These souls deserve to be remembered, not consumed. They are not just darkness, they are stories waiting to be told. Determination surged through him, a wave that intensified with the rise of the forge's flames. He hoisted the hammer overhead, each nerve in his body alight with purpose, and let the fury of the forge guide his strength. With every strike against the anvil, a shout of defiance echoed for Anna. For Jacob. For every life intertwined with mine. As he swung, light exploded, casting away the threatening shadows, illuminating faces filled with longing for release. The more he fought, the more clarity blossomed. You can't have me. He roared, striking once more. Energy surged in breathtaking flames, wrapping around the spectral forms, pulling them into the warmth of his defiance. The shadows shrieked, but their cries were not of anger, they were cries of recognition, of hope. Through the chaos, he caught sight of William, still caught between the realms, eyes wide with both fear and yearning. Reach for me. Thomas cried, and in that moment, he understood the darkness sought to fracture him, to isolate him from those he longed to save. He wouldn't allow it. Help me forge the bridge. Thomas shouted. The forge roared back to life, the ancient stone seeming alive, resonating with his cries. Together. We have the power to forge our own destiny. The hammer came down again and again, each strike a testament to resilience. The flames danced wildly now, weaving through the shadows, dispersing the mists of despair that clung like cobwebs. Thomas felt the weight of the past lighten, the pain of those beautiful lives igniting into a cacophony of love and loss, a melody he wielded like a sword. The figure, the dark phantom that had tried to seduce him, recoiled as Thomas's resolve shimmered brighter than ever. Your power is no match for the emptiness within, it boomed, but there was a crack in its voice, a crack of uncertainty. You'll lose everything. No. He countered, voice steady, breath racing. I'll gain everything. Their stories will not die, they'll echo through time. With one final, resounding clang, the forge unleashed a shockwave, engulfing the shadows. It was as if time itself paused. For a heartbeat, the darkness fractured around him. Faces emerged in the pirouetting flames, smiling now. Anna's gentle eyes glistened with warmth and gratitude, while Jacob's laughter echoed like a familiar tune. Together. William shouted, an infectious light swelling within. We're coming home. As if the forge honored his call, the fires erupted in a wild frenzy, igniting the air with scorching delight. Shadows began to wane, their cries turning from anguish into a harmonious sigh, a release. With one last strike, the anvil sang a symphony that countered the darkness, unleashing a vibrant surge that swept through the forge. Brightness engulfed Thomas, enveloping him, and the souls intertwined in that beautiful struggle. They were no longer parts of the shadows, they became radiant threads woven into a tapestry of legacy and memory. And then silence. The shadows dissolved, swirling away like mist under the rising sun. Breath escaping him in shaky gasps, Thomas opened his eyes to an almost surreal tranquility. The forge still crackled, not with chaos, but with a soft warmth, as though it had cradled the stories of countless lives. Around him, the souls glimmered with ethereal light, their faces relaxed, the burden of their pain lifted. Thank you, a soft voice whispered, and he knew that they had been freed, and they would not be forgotten. Slowly, the forge walls flickered back to mundane stone and soot, the weight of eternity fading as dawn's first light spilled through the entrance, transforming the darkness into hues of gold and amber. A final soft breeze grazed his cheek, and with it came the warmth of release. Thomas felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. His battle was over, but a new journey beckoned. The weight he once carried transformed into a light-filled legacy, and now he would carry their names forward. Goodbye, my friends, he whispered, heart swelling. You will always be a part of me. With that, Thomas stepped forward, the blacksmith of the forge now reborn as the weaver of stories that he would tell the world what he had learned. And as he walked into the sun, he vowed, their stories would not just echo, they would shine. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to show your support and help us reach more fans. Flood the comments section with your reactions about this incredible ending, and share your theories. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans, this is your moment to show your love.